Hey everyone, it's Jack here, TalkNorwichCity. Welcome back to another video. It has been a very busy few weeks. I feel like I keep saying that at the start of these videos, but it's true. It has been busy. It's been exciting. Everyone I speak to at the club, fans of the club, are excited about the potential of this season, and that's a great feeling. You know, often we've been coming into the start of championship campaigns, and granted, the start of last season was exciting. There was a new head coach and new players, much like this time round, but it still felt like there was an element of uncertainty. You had the stuff going on with Jonathan Rowe and Adam Eder, and we'd lost our best player in Gabi Sara. Yes, we've lost Borja Science, and I'm sure there will be more outgoings and maybe a bit more uncertainty around certain players as we lead into the start of the season, but at time of recording, in the middle of July, Norwich have played their first pre-season game behind closed doors against Northampton, where they ran out pretty convincing winners. There's been fairly good transfer business done so far. There is money being spent at the football club, and more importantly, Norwich are picking up the players that they want. Not the players that they're left with, the players that they want. They're going out, they're targeting the players in a very a calculated way, players that they've been following for a long time, and they don't care if there's competition. They will find a way to get it done. That's incredibly exciting. You can see through here some of the players, all of the players running through that we've brought in, and of course just the one transfer out. I know that you could class Angus Gunn and Onel, etc., but I will leave that for now. It was just Borja Science who's left the building for £14.5 million. That could potentially rise. So a significant amount of money coming in. We've also spent a fair amount as well. Jacob Wright, Kovacevic, obviously Chris Gordon, and the point of this video today is to highlight the ongoing transfer rumours. What's going on at this moment in time, because there's a lot of moving parts and it's sometimes difficult to keep on top of everyone. So let's try and do that today. Right, that's the kind of overall look at the transfer completed deals done so far. Now, this is a player that we haven't spoken about for a few days. Pelle Matson. This one looks to be in a pretty good place. Now, I think we're still a couple of days, maybe a week off a conclusion to this saga. But Pelle Matson is a player that Norwich City really like. He is a central defensive midfielder, can play slightly further up the pitch if needs be. Again, young, in his prime, and a pretty low market value. Now, Portsmouth have been interested for quite some time. West Brom have been interested as well. So Championship kind of suitors for Matson, obviously out in Denmark at Silkeborg at the moment, where he's had a pretty fruitful career so far. It seems to be, and this isn't just a Norwich City thing, it seems that the Championship is becoming a more attractive division for players to move to from abroad as well. And I think there's a reason for that. You've seen the progression from lots of players over the recent couple of seasons, either going into the Premier League or even with Norwich City, like going into big European clubs. You know, Gabi Sara, Jonathan Rowe, Borja Science. You know, if you have a good season or a couple of good seasons in the Championship, there's no reason why you can't have a really successful career somewhere. And I think that players are starting to identify that. Pelle Matson, the club clearly like, right? Because if you look at Norwich City's midfield options at the moment, you've got quite a lot. You do have a lot. You've obviously got Kenny McLean and Jacob Wright, who we know all about. We've made that Jacob Wright deal permanent. You can then add into the fold the likes of Liam Gibbs, Marcelino Nunez. And suddenly then you've got, okay, well, that's 5 kind of central midfielders. We're not going to need that many. I think this one, and look, the rumours around Marcelino Nunez so far have been non-existent. They've been nothing. And I think out of Science, Sargent and Nunez was always going to be the one that maybe rumbled on for quite some time, or maybe just doesn't leave at all. But when I saw this Pelle Matson rumour come about, I was thinking, okay, maybe they're trying to find a route out for Marcelino Nunez, because why would you need another player of his type at the football club? Yes, he's slightly different. He's not, of course, an identical version to Marcelino Nunez. I just got the sense, and this is through no knowledge or anything, it's just a gut feeling, that maybe Liam Manning wants a slightly more all-rounder than Marcelino Nunes, someone that gets stuck into the tackle. And look, Nunes was one of Norwich City's best players last season. He is one of our best players, and I think it would be disappointing to see him go. But if the club feel like they can get a decent price for him, then maybe that's what they're looking for. Look, end of the day, it's better to have more options than not enough. I just looked at the current squad and I went, oh my goodness, like there's suddenly quite a lot of midfielders at the club. There's always going to be rumours around Kenny McLean. I think Liam Manning likes Liam Gibbs, and I think he will be in the in the equation. Maybe not necessarily from a midfield standpoint. Maybe he'll play elsewhere in that setup. But I'm just running through the midfielders now. You've got Slimane, you've got Marcondes, you've got Fortuna Mankwa that can drop in a little bit deeper. I think he'll probably play slightly more advanced. You've got Gabe Forsyth, who's probably still classed as a midfielder. Oscar Schwartau. There's a lot. Pelle Matson, I think this one is looking in a pretty good place. I think Norwich City might beat Portsmouth and West Brom to the signature. Defensive midfielder, tough tackler, 23 years old, couple of £1 million, good career so far. That kind of has the thumbs up from me. We spoke about this guy on yesterday's video, Pape Diallo, left winger, very, very quick, tall for a winger, and is still very young. He's out in France at the moment with Metz in Ligue 1. And Watford were the potential suitors for him. They had a bid for just over £4 million agreed. Much like a couple of clubs had a deal agreed with Matthews Quisgorm. And Norwich City have come in, swooped in late. Now, this one is still slightly up in the air. You've got moving elements. You've obviously still got the Watford situation. You've got work permit situations going on. Norwich City like this guy. He is seen as a direct replacement for Borja Sainz. He plays in the same position. He's right-footed. He can cut in, much like Borja. And again, championship interest for a player in the top flight of France. It shows the attractive nature of this division and also the attractive nature of Norwich City. The fact that they've been able to go in and even turn his head somewhat is a good sign for me. Now, it's up to you who you think has a better chance of promotion to the Premier League next season. Is it Norwich City? Is it Watford? I would hope and pray that answer is Norwich City. And that forward line is starting to shape up pretty nicely. You've obviously got Ante Cianats, you've got Matthias Quisgorm, Josh Sargent is still here. We'll get on to him shortly. Mate Jurisic, as I say. So you're starting to see Oscar Schwartau, Fortuna Mankwa, who can play in that advanced position. You might even want to push a Kenny McLean type slightly further forwards, or an Emi Marcondes. So that's shaping up nicely. I think they still want reinforcements. They've obviously lost Hernandez, Borja Sainz, Dobbin has gone. So there's we need players. We've found one of them. We need a couple of more. They will be hoping that Pape Diallo is that man. I'm excited about the potential of Diallo. Look, he's still very young and he's still pretty unproven. But he's a Senegalese international, scored a couple of goals for them already, had a pretty good goal contributions rate out in France last season. If Norwich can swoop in and beat Watford to this one, then once again it shows that there's a real pulling power at Norwich City at the moment. So that's Diallo, and it means that this chap, Hyun-Jun has been kind of put on the back burner somewhat. He's at Celtic at the moment. He's a 23-year-old winger, South Korea. This one was looking, I think, to be more of a loan move. Now, there's a couple of names up in the air at the moment. Hyun-Jun Yang. You've also got Lewis Kumas of Liverpool, who's been linked with a move to Norwich City. He would be a really interesting one. I like Lewis Kumas. But again, Hyun-Jun Yang, huge potential. Celtic have been pretty good at scouting in the sort of Asian markets over the last few seasons. They've done a good job of that. And they like the look of Hyun-Jun Yang. Now, the reports came out from Sky Sports earlier this week that Norwich City were interested in him. I think that's been dampened slightly by the local journalists who are saying that they are confident that Pape Diallo will sign on the dotted line for Norwich City. That would then mean the opportunity to bring Hyun-Jun is made slightly redundant. Again, tricky winger, young, we've discussed it before. Similar age profiles of all these types of players. Gone are the days of Norwich City going out and trying to sign experienced 33, 34-year-olds. Although there were links to Aaron Cresswell last week, but that hasn't happened. And look, you need some of those. Proven, young, something to, a bit of a grit between the teeth and something to try and prove to progress their careers further. Hyun-Jun, at the moment, at time of recording, not as likely to happen as the likes of Pape, Diallo and Pelle, Matson. Now, that's the incomings, and they were all players in the kind of more advanced areas, Matson aside. You will be asking, Jack, what's going on with Josh Sargent? Well, I'm afraid to report that these rumours are strengthening. Wolfsburg and Burnley, the most likely to bring Josh Sargent in. Now, we spoke probably about 10 days ago now about Josh Sargent, and we said that the quoted figures of what Norwich City want felt fairly on the low side. That was a report from Paddy Davitt of the Pink 'Un. There have been lots of numbers thrown about with Josh Sargent. I think the key facts and figures to remember here is he's still got 3 years left of his contract. So Norwich City have negotiating power here. I don't see Josh Sargent as the type to throw the toys out of the pram and force a move. Equally, I think we're approaching a time in his career where it probably makes sense for Josh Sargent to move on, both for the football club and for Josh Sargent. He has played 3 seasons in the Championship now, and has done well in each of them. He was kind of the shadow of Teemu Pukki for a little while, and has now kind of become very much the Championship's best number 9, and is very talented. There are, of course, injury concerns around him. I think they've maybe been overstated a little bit. They've often come from kind of impact injuries rather than recurring muscle concerns. But that will play a part. The last 2 seasons he's missed a lot of football. Josh Sargent is, I think, out of Sainz, Nunez and anyone in this squad, the one that you would most want to keep. Equally, with the signings of Mathias Quistorm, with Ante Sienats, there is the opportunity for one of those guys to then really step up and become Norwich City's new main man. And I can see a world where that happens. You do need a pathway for these players, and I think Sienats and Quistorm will be not hoping that Sargent leaves, of course. They know the talent of this man, but will sense opportunity if he does. £16 million was the quoted number when we were reading through that Pink 'Un article. I think it will be closer to £20 million. I think if they can get to a sum where the number starts with a 2 and not £2 million, I think if you can get £20 million plus, I think Norwich will accept. I think both Wolfsburg and Burnley are being persistent. They came in, both of them, with offers far lower than what Norwich City wanted to accept, but they've gone nowhere. They're still sticking around. I think this one will continue to rumble on a little bit, but we are now approaching a world where Josh Sargent moving away from Norwich City is becoming more likely. Premier League football, look, it's going to be really tough at Burnley to stay in that division, but you are back in the Premier League. Bundesliga football with Wolfsburg, I think that would probably make more sense for Josh Sargent. But look, he may want to stay in England. I think the big thing for him is how does he get a call up to play for his country over the next 12 months? And I think that is far more likely when you're in the Bundesliga or the Premier League. So unfortunately, as I record this, I'm feeling slightly less confident of Josh Sargent remaining at the football club. But it must be said, if no club comes in with a bid that Norwich City deems suitable, he will be going nowhere. There's no rush in terms of contract situation. They will be hopeful that they can either keep him or get a really good price for Josh Sargent. So that's going to be an interesting one. So that's kind of the ongoing transfer rumours at the moment. It's been very busy so far. I think we said, didn't we, on the podcast leading into this window that it's, there is a world where Norwich City sign 10 players this summer, and that is probably going to happen. There are going to be more rumours. There are going to be, from that list of names, a couple that probably sign, and there are, of course, going to be a lot of outgoings. I think all of the concentration so far has been players coming in. You obviously need to let some go as well. It was a fairly kind of busy start to the window. You had Angus Garnon, Hernandez, Jakob Sorensen leaving. So, we've lost a few from that. You obviously had a few loanees in Dobbin, etc. So it's going to be, a frantic close to this window, but you can slowly start to see this squad shaping up. I think it was nice to get that behind closed doors friendly in, and I know we didn't see kind of any of the game, but we saw the formations and such. I think from a defensive standpoint, you can see that pretty clearly how that's going to work. The midfield is still very much up in the air, and then I'm fascinated to see how he starts with that kind of attacking lineup. So there we go. Pelle, Matson, Pape, Diallo, Hyun-Jun, and Josh Sargent. Hopefully up to speed on that. I'm sure by the time I've released this is out of date already. Things move quickly, but thank you very much for watching. I hope you're enjoying the content at the moment, and I'll see you all again very soon. Bye-bye.